Take a common pill bug, the small gray creature that rolls into a ball in a garden. Now, imagine the same animal, same body plan, same armored segments, but the size of a football. That is not a different species. That is what happens to the same lineage when it goes deep enough. The giant isopod grows up to 50 centimeters long and weighs over a kilogram. Its shallow water relative, the common woodlouse, reaches approximately 1.5 centimeters. The size difference between the two is not a fluke or an accident. It is a documented biological pattern observed across dozens of species in the deep ocean. A pattern that scientists have been studying for over a century without fully explaining. It has a name: deep sea gigantism. A shrimp-like amphipod that reaches 1 centimeter in a tidal pool grows to over 30 centimeters in the Mariana Trench. The Japanese spider crab, whose shallow water relatives are modest in size, develops a leg span of nearly 4 meters in the deep waters off Japan, the widest of any living arthropod. The colossal squid reaches an estimated 14 meters in length and a weight approaching 500 kilograms. The heaviest invertebrate ever recorded. The lion's mane jellyfish stretches its tentacles to 37 meters, longer than a blue whale. None of these animals are anomalies. Each one is a data point in the same pattern. The question is not whether deep-sea gigantism is real. It is documented too consistently across too many unrelated species to be questioned. The question is why. What forces in the deep ocean produce giants across lineages as different as crustaceans, cephalopods, jellyfish, and worms? The answer is not one thing. It is several forces operating simultaneously, each one pushing in the same direction. And together, they add up to one of the most extraordinary biological phenomena on the planet. Below approximately 1,000 meters, ocean temperature stabilizes at just above freezing, typically between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius, and remains there regardless of what is happening at the surface. This is not a temporary condition. It is the permanent baseline state of the deep ocean, consistent across most of the world's ocean basins, maintained by the slow circulation of dense polar water sinking and spreading across the ocean floor. The deep ocean has been cold for tens of millions of years. The animals that live there evolved inside that cold. Cold temperature does something specific and measurable to biological metabolism. As temperature drops, the rate of chemical reactions in cells slows. For most animals, this would be a straightforward disadvantage. Slower reactions mean slower movement, slower digestion, slower everything. But in the deep ocean, this slowdown interacts with the environment in a way that favors rather than penalizes size. A slower metabolism means the body burns through its energy reserves more slowly. An animal with a slower metabolism can survive longer between meals. In the deep ocean, where food arrives infrequently and in small amounts, the ability to wait a long time between feeding events is not just useful, it is the primary survival skill. This is where size becomes an advantage. Larger bodies have a lower metabolic rate per unit of body mass than smaller bodies, a principle that applies across virtually all animal groups. A large animal burns proportionally less energy per kilogram of tissue than a small one of the same species. In the food-scarce deep ocean, a larger animal can therefore survive on the same absolute amount of food for longer than a smaller one. The giant isopod's documented ability to go over 4 years without food is not a special superpower. It is the metabolic consequence of large body mass operating at near freezing temperature. Size and cold together create an animal that is extraordinarily patient. And in the abyss, patience is survival. But cold alone does not fully explain the giants. The second force is something that lives in the water itself. Cold water dissolves more oxygen than warm water. This is basic chemistry. Gas solubility increases as temperature decreases, and oxygen is no exception. The deep ocean, kept permanently cold by the circulation of dense polar water, maintains dissolved oxygen concentrations significantly higher than the warm surface waters of tropical seas. This matters enormously for large bodies. Oxygen supply is one of the fundamental constraints on body size in animals. Every cell in a body requires oxygen to function. Larger bodies contain more cells, require more oxygen, and need that oxygen delivered efficiently through tissue and blood. In warm, shallow water, where oxygen concentrations are lower, growing a very large body becomes progressively harder to sustain. The cells at the extremities of a large animal struggle to receive sufficient oxygen, creating physiological limits on how big that animal can grow. In the cold, oxygen-rich deep, this constraint is significantly relaxed. The dissolved oxygen available per unit of tissue volume is higher, meaning large bodies can be sustained without the cells suffocating from inadequate supply. This oxygen-size relationship has been studied extensively in polar gigantism, the tendency of marine invertebrates in Antarctic and Arctic waters to grow far larger than their relatives in temperate or tropical seas. Antarctic sea spiders reach leg spans of 70 centimeters. Their tropical relatives measure a few centimeters. Antarctic isopods and polychaete worms all show the same pattern. The mechanism is the same as in the deep. Cold water holds more oxygen, and more oxygen means larger bodies are physiologically viable. Deep sea gigantism and polar gigantism share the same root cause. The deep ocean is, in effect, permanently polar, cold and oxygen-rich year-round, in every ocean basin, at every longitude. Research on Antarctic sea spiders confirmed oxygen supply as the primary size-limiting factor. Not genetics, not food, not competition. Experimental changes to dissolved oxygen directly change growth rates. Cold water and its dissolved oxygen are not just a backdrop for deep-sea gigantism. They are an active mechanism. Cold and oxygen explain how giants can exist, but not why so many different deep-sea lineages converged on the same strategy. The deep ocean is one of the most food-scarce environments on Earth. Below 1,000 meters, photosynthesis cannot occur. No sunlight reaches these depths, so no plants grow and no primary production takes place. Every calorie that sustains life in the deep ocean originated at the surface and has been falling, being consumed, and being partially reconsumed during its descent for days or weeks, before whatever remains arrives at depth. By the time organic material reaches the abyssal floor, an estimated 99% of the energy that left the surface has already been consumed. What arrives is called marine snow, a slow, sparse drift of tiny organic particles, dead cells, fecal pellets, and fragments of tissue that provides a thin but continuous rain of nutrition. Occasionally, something much larger arrives, a dead fish, a squid, a whale. These are windfalls that can sustain entire scavenger communities for months or years. The giant isopod strategy is built around this reality. Eat enormously when food arrives, store the energy, then wait. Its documented fasting record of over 4 years in captivity reflects a metabolism shaped by millions of years in a world where the next meal is genuinely uncertain. In this context, larger body size offers a direct competitive advantage in 2 separate ways. First, A larger body stores more energy, more fat, more tissue mass that can be metabolized slowly during extended fasting periods. A 50-centimeter isopod carries proportionally more energy reserves than a 5-centimeter one, and burns through them more slowly due to its lower metabolic rate per unit of mass. Second, a larger body can access larger food items. When a whale falls to the abyssal floor, the animals that can exploit it most completely are those large enough to process significant quantities of dense tissue quickly. Size becomes a feeding advantage at exactly the moment when feeding opportunities matter most. The Greenland shark provides the most extreme illustration of the deep ocean time scale, growing approximately 1 centimeter per year. It reaches sexual maturity at around 150 years of age. Radiocarbon dating of eyelen's tissue found individuals estimated at over 400 years old, the oldest vertebrate ever recorded. This is not a biological anomaly. It is the logical endpoint of cold water, food-scarce metabolism applied to a large-bodied animal. In the deep, time runs differently. Food scarcity and cold explain the metabolic logic of deep sea size. But there is a third force that the deep ocean applies, and it pushes in the same direction from a completely different angle. In the shallow, sunlit ocean, the pressure to stay small is relentless. Small bodies hide in crevices. Small bodies accelerate faster relative to their mass. Small bodies require less food to sustain, making them less exposed during the periods between meals when a larger animal would need to forage more actively and visibly. The entire ecology of the shallow reef is built around a constant, intense, multi-directional predation pressure that rewards smallness, speed, and concealment. Animals that grow too large become visible, slow, and expensive to maintain, and they get eaten. The deep ocean removes most of this pressure. Below 1,000 meters, the density of predators drops dramatically. There are no great white sharks in the midnight zone, no dolphins, no orcas. The hunters of the deep are specialists adapted to extreme scarcity. The anglerfish with its bioluminescent lure, the dragonfish with its red searchlight invisible to most prey, the gulper eel whose expandable jaw allows it to swallow prey larger than its own head. These are formidable predators within their ecological context, but they are few, they are specialized, and they do not exert the constant, saturating predation pressure that defines shallow water ecology. This absence of generalized predation creates what ecologists call a predation release, a reduction in the evolutionary pressure that normally keeps prey animals small, fast, and inconspicuous. When that pressure is removed or significantly reduced, there is no longer a penalty for growing large. A giant isopod armored with thick, overlapping exoskeletal plates and the dimensions of a football is simply not a worthwhile target for most deep-sea predators. The energy cost of cracking it open exceeds the caloric return. The Japanese spider crab's 4-meter leg span is not a hunting tool. It is a deterrent, a structure that makes the animal so large and so geometrically difficult to handle that most predators redirect their attention to easier prey. The predation release hypothesis predicts that in low predation environments, animals tend to evolve larger body sizes because larger size no longer carries the penalty it would in a high predation context, while all the metabolic advantages of size remain. The deep sea evidence is consistent with this across multiple unrelated lineages. It is not that the deep actively selects for large size, it is that the deep stops selecting against it, and without that pressure, the advantages of size accumulate freely. Cold, oxygen, food scarcity, and predation release explain why the deep can produce giants, but they do not explain why it keeps producing them, generation after generation, with such consistency. Shallow marine environments change. Temperatures rise and fall with the seasons. Currents shift. Storm events redistribute nutrients and organisms. Ice ages advance and retreat over millennia, reshaping coastlines and ocean circulation. Surface ecosystems are dynamic. Species that cannot adapt quickly enough to changing conditions are replaced by those that can. This constant disruption drives rapid evolution in some lineages and eliminates others. The shallow ocean is a place of evolutionary turbulence. The deep ocean is something entirely different. Temperature, pressure, and light conditions at the abyssal floor have remained essentially constant for tens of millions of years. The slow circulation of deep ocean water is driven by processes operating on geological timescales. Ice ages that transformed surface ecosystems left the deepest parts of the ocean largely undisturbed. The deep is, in evolutionary terms, a place of extraordinary stability, and that stability has consequences for how life evolves within it. In a stable environment, slow life history strategies, late sexual maturity, low reproductive rates, long lifespan, large body size, become viable in a way they are not in fluctuating environments. In an environment that might change catastrophically within a few generations, a strategy that requires 150 years to reach reproductive maturity is a recipe for extinction. One bad event eliminates the entire pre-reproductive population. In an environment that has not changed significantly in millions of years, that strategy carries no such risk. The investment in slow growth and large body size pays off across a time frame that the stability of the environment makes reliable. Slow growth, large size, and low reproductive output are not disadvantages in the deep. They are the specific strategy that the deep stability makes sustainable. A long-term investment that only works in an environment reliable enough to pay out across centuries. The giant isopod lineage traces back to the Jurassic, over 160 million years ago. The frilled shark's form has been consistent for 80 million years. The nautilus shell design is essentially unchanged for 500 million years. These are not animals that failed to evolve. They found a solution in a stable environment and had no reason to change it. The deep ocean is a refuge from the disruption that drives change everywhere else. And in that refuge, giants have had millions of years to refine their size. All five forces, cold, oxygen, food scarcity, predation release, and stability, point in the same direction. But the full picture of deep-sea gigantism includes creatures that achieved their size through an entirely different route. Deep-sea gigantism manifests differently across different animal groups, but the underlying forces driving it are consistent. The Japanese spider crab inhabits waters off the Japanese coast between 150 and 800 meters depth. Its body, the carapace, measures approximately 40 centimeters across. Its leg span reaches nearly 4 meters. It is the largest living arthropod by leg span, and it achieves this size through a combination of slow growth. Individuals are believed to live for up to 100 years, and the cold, predator-reduced environment of its habitat. Juveniles in shallow water face significant predation and stay small. Adults in the deep face almost none and grow accordingly. The colossal squid takes gigantism to its invertebrate extreme. Estimated at 10 to 14 meters in total length, with a body mass approaching 500 kilograms, it carries the largest eyes of any animal ever recorded. up to 27 centimeters in diameter, with pupils reaching 9 centimeters across. Those eyes are not ornamental. In the near total darkness of the Southern Ocean depths, detecting the faint, bioluminescent glow of approaching sperm whales, animals that dive specifically to hunt the colossal squid, requires an eye capable of gathering the maximum possible light from the minimum possible source. The colossal squid's eyes are gigantism applied to a sensory organ. Bigger eyes for the same reason the whole animal is bigger, because the deep ocean makes it viable and the environment makes it necessary. Tube worms of the species Riftia pachyptila, clustered around hydrothermal vents on the deep ocean floor, reach over 2 meters in length, the longest marine worm known. They achieve this size through an entirely different mechanism than either the isopod or the squid. Riftia has no mouth and no digestive system. Its body is filled with an organ called the trophosome, packed with chemosynthetic bacteria that convert hydrogen sulfide from the vent water into organic compounds. The worm does not hunt, forage, or compete for food. It farms it internally. The energy supply, provided continuously by the vent chemistry, is essentially unlimited compared to the sparse marine snow that other deep-sea organisms depend on. Riftia's gigantism is not driven by scarcity. It is driven by abundance, a localized, chemically powered abundance unlike anything else in the deep ocean. The lion's mane jellyfish had the largest recorded specimen with a bell of 2.3 meters and tentacles extending 37 meters, longer than a blue whale. Its enormous tentacle span serves one purpose: passive prey capture across a wide area. A jellyfish drifts. The larger the tentacles spread, the greater the volume of water sampled with each movement. Cold, oxygen-rich water supports the tissue mass. Lower predation pressure in cold northern waters removes the constraint to stay small. Size increases coverage without increasing the energy cost of hunting. The giants already known to science are extraordinary, but the scale of what remains undiscovered suggests the full picture of deep-sea gigantism has barely been outlined. Less than 25% of the ocean floor has been mapped at a resolution sufficient to identify significant geological features. The Hadal Zone, the deepest ocean trenches below 6,000 meters, has been physically visited by crewed submersibles fewer times than the surface of the moon has been walked on. Every expedition to the deep returns with new species, not occasional discoveries. Regular, consistent documentation of organisms that have never been seen before. The 2023 Seamount expedition in the southeastern Pacific alone documented over 100 potential new species in a single survey of previously unmapped seamounts. The pattern holds regardless of where the research is conducted or how advanced the technology. The giants documented so far were all discovered by accident in habitats representing a small fraction of the total deep ocean. Mariana Trench amphipods reaching 30 centimeters were found in samples from one of the deepest points on Earth. The big fin squid has been filmed fewer than 12 times. Whether larger representatives of known giant lineages exist in the unexplored majority is not a question science can currently answer. The forces that produce gigantism in the deep ocean are not unique to Earth. Europa, a moon of Jupiter, is believed to have a cold, pressurized subsurface ocean with possible hydrothermal vent activity. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, has been confirmed to contain liquid water, complex organic molecules, and hydrogen, the chemical signature of active vents. Both share fundamental properties with Earth's deep ocean: cold, dark, pressurized, and potentially chemically energized at the floor. The existence of deep-sea gigantism on Earth does not predict what life, if any, exists in those environments, but it does demonstrate something important. The conditions that make large, complex animal life seem impossible, crushing pressure, near freezing temperature, absolute darkness, sparse food, are not actually barriers to size. They are, under the right circumstances, conditions that actively promote it. The deep ocean has produced animals larger than most of what lives in sunlit water. It has done so through mechanisms that are well understood and that depend on conditions found in other cold, dark, pressurized liquid environments in the solar system. The giants of the deep are not freaks of evolution. They are the logical outcome of specific physical conditions applied across enough time. Those conditions exist elsewhere. What evolves in them is the question science has not yet been able to answer, because it has not yet been able to look. Every giant pulled from the deep ocean, every isopod, every squid, every jellyfish trailing 37 meters of tentacle through Arctic water, is evidence of the same principle. Push the right conditions hard enough, for long enough, and life does not shrink to fit its constraints. It expands to fill them. The deep ocean has been running this experiment for hundreds of millions of years in the dark, under pressure that would destroy almost anything built at the surface. The results are still coming in, and the sample size, by any scientific measure, is still very small.